Okay. Well, welcome to season 5 of Changing the Game, 3 easy ways to close more A-plus clients. I'm your host, Jennifer Hensley from Playmaker Coaching Consulting. Excited to have everybody with us today and everybody will be listening to this after the fact and to be joined by Zach Thamm. We'll get to his introduction in just a minute. But we know that, the calendar year is fast approaching, and whether you've hit your goals, you're a little bit behind, or, you're running to the finish line, this series is really designed to make sure that you have some very actionable steps that you can use to close more A-plus clients this year and make sure you start January with your pipeline filled. So as I said, I'm host Jennifer Hensley. I've worked with NM advisors for the past 20 years and really excited to bring you the best ideas from some of our up and coming advisors and what's working for them in their business. So this is specifically designed really for those advisors about 2 to 10 years in business that are trying to reach that next level. And I know we'll have a few people hopping on here that we will have time for some question and answer after our topic in 10. So if you missed last couple weeks ago, we had Katie Jacobson with us, who she talked about your number one job is to be found by your ideal clients. If you missed that, make sure that you follow us on Facebook at NM Marketing Playmakers, and you can listen to the recording of that and all of our episodes there. So as I said, today we're joined by Zach Thamm. Thanks for being with us today. Would love to hear a little bit about your practice, how long you've been in practice, who you work with. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into our topic for today.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. So, hey, everybody. So I'm based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. Been in the business for going into my 8th year now. So I started as an intern in 2015. Didn't know what I was doing, but it was like I never wanted to work for anybody. So I was like, this seems like a good enough career. So went into my first full-time year in 2016. So I've been running since, for the last 6 to 7 years, specifically in the medical space. Even more specific than that, our practice really hones a lot on the universities within our region. So we do a lot of speaking engagements at PA programs, dental schools, medical schools, PT programs, some pharmacy schools. So we're at about 22 different universities at the moment doing financial literacy. And we got started doing that in about 2017, so a couple years after I started, mainly because there was nobody else doing it, and there was a lot of people that we could capture in a short amount of time, build some immediate trust, and so that's been the vast majority and the bulk of where our business comes from is grooming those young people, because they come out making a ton of money, not knowing what to do with it. So we capture them basically right before they even get their first job on how to manage all of that stuff.
Well, I love that background and talking about the sheer magnitude amazes me of how many different universities you talked about. So I know we'll probably get into that a little bit more in depth, because a lot of people are in the medical market and what that really has looked like, of how you've been able to differentiate yourself in that space. So let's talk a little bit more about, when you think about our topic around how to close more A-plus clients, why is that particularly meaningful? I mean, everybody wants more clients, but what is that difference that really makes to you in your practice by focusing on more of those A-plus clients?
Well, first off, I think it's important to get very, very clear on what that is to you, because just by saying an A-plus client, to me, that means something very different to the advisor that's been in the business for 30 years, who they only see people that make $5 to $10 million a year. So for us, right now, that is a household income of $250,000 or more, or have investable assets of $500,000 or more. So that's really our main criteria on the financial piece of it. But it just gets me more excited when I talk to those people, because they realize that the complexities, when you have more money, when you make more money, you have a family, they increase, rather than when you're a young single individual, where I think a lot of us probably start out working with the 25 to 30-year-old who knows more than anybody because they have some crypto and a stock trading account that they made a ton of money in 2020. That's not exciting for anybody. So the people that realize that to get to their goals, it's going to take a much more complex set of tools to to get there. It's, and they really appreciate that rather than pushing back. And so for me, that's really important in one, defining who those people are, but ultimately, it's whoever gets you excited. And for us, it's the people in the medical space getting, roughly that income.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that and everything. If you don't know who your ideal client is, it's really hard to say, hey, how do I attract people and how do I spend more time closing more ideal clients when I really haven't defined what that looks like. I'm still in like, oh, anybody can be my client. So getting more specific around that. So tell us a little bit more about a marketing strategy. And this might go back to what you're talking about with going in deep with all of these universities that's worked for you. What does that look like?
Yeah. So when we started with the universities, honestly, we kind of stumbled into it. We had a client. He's a director at a healthcare system here in North Carolina, and we were asking him who are some of the young docs that are coming in that would be good for us to talk to. And he was like, well, most of the docs that I work with are pretty old, so they're probably set in their ways. But we've got a couple of young physician assistants coming in that I think would really benefit. We talked to her, and she was like, hey, would you guys think about coming and doing this as a talk at our school? And we were like, well, yeah, that'd be a great idea. So we did that with one program, and the director of the program there got us in touch with literally every other PA program in the state. And so it was just, honestly, it was kind of handed to us. We were like, wow, there's something really here. So I think the year before I started doing all the seminars I did, my start was pretty rough. I think I did like 30 new clients my first year before we did the seminars. And then the first year after we started getting all of them, it was like 70 to 75. So it was a pretty radical jump because it was a lot of just very easy trust that was built from the get-go, because we have the name of the university backed behind what we're doing and coming and talking to them. And then from a marketing perspective, it was very simply, hey, who else do you know that graduated from another program? And basically one of three areas: dental, med school, PA. We've expanded elsewhere, but those were the three mains that we were focusing on. And then it just kind of grew naturally from there. And that's how we've gone from, we started with one, and then now we're at, like I said, I think it's like 20 or 22.
So I imagine that's, a fair amount of time that you're probably spending doing those engagements with that many different places and everything. Tell us a bit more about if somebody's interested in, like, maybe they've tested the water in speaking or wanting to do some more, and they're like, how do I get started? What are like the 3 steps if they want to, get into this space or, take it to the next level? What do you recommend?
Yeah. So obviously we started out just off the cuff doing what we thought was best, which I think it was a pretty rough version of where we were or where we are now, which I think we've got it pretty refined, which is why it's grown so organically. But the first thing is just asking your current clients or prospects, who do you know that graduated from these different programs? Who do you know that's a medical resident? Everybody knows somebody in the medical field. It's a very easy thing to get into. Or asking them, who do you know that, if you don't know specifically somebody, who do you know that would know that person? And all it is really just getting an introduction to like the clinical coordinator or the director. And then once getting the conversation on the calendar with them, it's just going over. We actually use so Northwestern has a good like medical planning checklist. And we just send that to the coordinator and say, hey, pull these with the students on the top 3 topics you want us to talk about. And so we always tell them, this is not a canned pitch. We come in there directing it very much to whatever the students want us to talk about. We want them to get out of this, because we only have them for an hour to an hour and a half. So if we pick 3 topics, we'll go half an hour for each topic. And then, we get the poll, and then we bring in, like a base PowerPoint to go through, just more so as using as visuals and reference points rather than this is what we're speaking off of. But we just popcorn out the questions, say, hey, what's the top thing you wanted to get out of this topic? And then, we just basically give them feedback from that. So I'd say the first, I guess, if there were 3 steps, it's 1, asking appropriately, who do you know that's a clinical director or coordinator or somebody that graduated from that type of program you're targeting? Getting and then asking them who would I talk to get introduced to a lot of these students, and then having the conversation with the director who makes those decisions on coordinating calendars, and then going through the planning checklist.
Yeah, that sounds like that's been very helpful and everything. So, what are the stumbling blocks or the challenges that you faced? You said some of this has been kind of handed to you and it's just worked really easily, but I'm sure with anything, there's always something learnings along the way. What's something that maybe others could avoid?
Yeah. A couple of things that we've run into, I'd say it doesn't happen as much anymore, but in the beginning, we would get railroaded by some of the directors saying, "Oh no, we have a professor who does what you guys do," which they very clearly do not. They go in there and they talk about some very rudimentary level student loan stuff, and so it's some of that is just having a really well teed up introduction, and being able to remove all of those barriers to entry before they're even put in your way. So say, hey, you guys probably have a professor that comes and does this stuff on a very basic level, but here's exactly what we do, and here's a success rate that we have by doing this. I mean, I think from all of the different programs that we talk to, and the one reason that we've really gone through this is because it's a lot more successful than the traditional way for how I was doing it before, just getting prospecting and referrals. It's about a 30%, 30 to 40% from prospect to client. So if we have 100 people in a class, typically 30 to 40 of them will become a client versus the average ratios of 10.
Yeah, that's a lot better than Grantham. I think a lot of people, they say, hey, how can I expedite this? How do I accelerate it? Some of that, you're converting a lot more, but you're also not working at one at a time. You've got, all these people in a room together.
Exactly.
So thinking about that in terms of things you've learned and stuff and what you were doing in the past, what was the shift for you when all of a sudden you're like, hey, I'm going to do this differently and go this route?
Well, if I'm being honest, it was probably me about to fail out of the business. I mean, that's really what it came down to. Was I've been doing this. It was going on 3 years to where I was, trying to find my way. What was the groove, and it just wasn't working. And it was like the light shining through a storm, which was this opportunity that really just opened up the door. Because I didn't really have any direction for who I wanted to work with, what space I wanted to work with, and what we found was when you get more narrowly focused on who you want to work with, those opportunities expand rather than just trying to work with everybody. It's very difficult. I was working with a lot of engineers starting out, and I hated working with engineers. My brother's an engineer, and he's a pain in the ass, but I love him. So it was this is not who I want to work with. Started working with, the medical professionals because they appreciated what we do just in the same way that people appreciate going to a doctor and getting their professional opinion. So it's a really good, partnership on that. But I'd say that the genesis of all of this was probably the push of, Zach, you need to make a decision on change things now, or you got to go find a different career.
Yeah, sometimes we need that, the pain of that forces us to make a change. If it's we're too comfortable, it's well, why change, right? But it sounds like you're in that position where it's hey, I've got nothing to lose. I've got to do something different. What direction is that going to be? And what this direction is really paid off for you. So we always want to give our audience a try it at work tip, something they can do in the, next week or two to really get started, to be able to start to close more clients in their business. Obviously, they're not going to host, a webinar or a speaking engagement with a university probably in the next 2 weeks. What's that first step that they can do that would help them move forward in this space?
Well, if anybody is interested in doing the speaking engagements, I mean, it is a little bit more of it's a little bit longer of a sales cycle, if you will. But the first thing is just going through all of your client base that you can identify that have these sorts of connections, whether it's somebody in the medical space already or somebody who's just really well connected, and asking them, hey, who do you know that works for a med school or a PA program or a dental school or a pharmacy school, and that oversees it, or who do you know that just recently graduated from one of those programs? Because those are the people that are most easily going to have a good relationship with the people that actually make those decisions. So I'd say it's two things. I'm asking for that, for people that specifically have just recently gotten out of those programs.
Great. Yeah. So definitely something they could do in the next couple of weeks is just going through your
Sure.
contacts. Who do you know? Right. And let's start there to get the ball moving, because we think about it too big. Sometimes it can feel a little daunting, or like, oh, that, is 6 months out, but you got to start somewhere. So I appreciate those insights on the first places you can start. And then we're curious from your perspectives in the marketing space. And as you're looking around for new ideas and how do you keep growing your business? How do you stay relevant in the future? Who are some people that you look to? Who else should this group be hearing from or reading about or listening to that has been really beneficial to you?
So do you mean more specifically on other advisors, or just resources that
it could be another advisor that you really look to that has been helpful to you in this space, or outside of the industry, somebody that you find very helpful to yourself?
Yeah. So there's a couple of other advisors in our network that do a degree of what our team does. My direct business partner, Jeff Jackman, he'd be a really good person to learn from. He's a GDD out of Greensboro, North Carolina. And he's the other person that we do all the speaking engagements with. And then, yeah, I mean, that would probably be the main person I could think of. He has a good perspective on all this stuff. Yeah, outside of the industry, man, I don't know. I've been in such in a tunnel for the last 5 years. I haven't even really spoken to many people about this stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're doing 20 some odd schools, that probably keeps you really busy.
Certainly does.
So we're going to open it up to some question and answer before we close things out today, everything. So if you have a question, you can drop it in the chat or just unmute yourself, ask your question. And while those questions are coming in, one of the questions that comes to my mind is, you did talk about so many schools, like, so how often are you speaking with them? How do you manage that? Like, that's not just a full-time job, just speaking there, and still have other parts of your business as well. What does that look like?
Yeah, great question. So it really doesn't take a lot of time, to be honest with you. It's an hour and a half, typically within a month before they graduate. We found the sweet spot for the students before they get their job is like, right before they take their big exam before graduation, because it's fresh on their mind, because they're like, oh man, the reality of being an adult is about to hit me. I need to focus on this now. So typically we speak to them about it. And it's only once a year. So we speak to each program once a year. It's not like a revolving thing every quarter. It's just not that relevant, so we go in there and we talk to them, and then we just have them fill out an evaluation form. And then that's where we start calling them, typically after they take their boards exams. And then, set up meetings typically a month before they start working, and do all the plans, and then put it all in place.
So you probably have a really tight, like, crunch time, then it sounds like, where most of them are hitting within a certain window of time.
Oh yeah. Like right now is typically the most amount of people that we'll talk to in any given time of the year, because most of them graduate between like the end of June and the beginning of August. So, a lot of them are starting to trickle into their jobs over the next couple of months. So we'll probably, I don't know, filter through 200 people in the next week and a half, 2 weeks.
Yeah. And then when that conversion ratio you talked about, lots of new things coming in for you for the end of the year. Can you talk a little bit more about how you're getting all the contact information to follow up with everybody that attends?
Yeah. So we have an evaluation form that we print out and hand out to every student. And it's for two reasons. One, feedback on how we can get better with the seminar. So if there was something that they didn't like, or something that went really well that we should continue doing, we want to know that, because we want it to be as impactful for them as possible. Because obviously not everybody knows the detailed level of work that we do like we do. And sometimes we forget that.
That level one communication.
Exactly. So the evaluation forms, and then we say, hey, this is your golden ticket. If you want to work with our team or get a plan done, we'll do it at no cost to you. at our team's expense because of our partnership with your program. And we actually weed out like, hey, if you're a do-it-yourselfer, please do not put your information down. We want to reserve the time for people who actually want to work with us and want a plan done and implement these things. But that's really the way that we do it. So we have them fill out their information, and then when they're taking their exam, so we know when's the best time to actually call them.
Great. Sounds like, some little points in there that really position it well for you.
Yeah.
And then the last question I have, and I will see if there's anything else from the group today, is you mentioned that you do this with another partner in the office and everything.
Yes.
What, in terms of like the presentation, the dynamic, is that something you recommend that other people do it? Do you see a difference in terms of that energy level and stuff of approaching this more of like, it's not just me in the room, but, we're coming together? Or a little bit more about, if you think that that's something people should consider when they're talking about how to do this, whether they do it alone or kind of do it with somebody else.
Yeah, I like doing it as a duo because we kind of feed off of each other, and our energy is matched by the energy in the room, or vice versa. The energy in the room is matched by ours, and so we like to bring the heat. We're not droning on about something for an hour and a half. We try to be as personable as possible. I mean, it's not a lot different than if we were talking to somebody on the street, or if we're in a client meeting. We want to make it a pretty engaging environment for them, and I think having two different people in the room does help. I've done several speaking engagements by myself, and they've gone well. It is just a different thing though, rather than having one focal point. You got people that can kind of have a mini conversation while they're delivering some good information.
Great. Well, if you didn't get your question answered today, or you find after listening to this, it prompts some additional questions, you can reach out to us through the NM Marketing Playmakers Facebook group, and we'll certainly respond and make sure that either myself or Zach gets back to you. I think one of the most common questions I get is around the topic that Zach talked about today about, it starts with your ideal client and defining who that is and really getting specific about how you help them. So if you're looking for some assistance on how to gain more clarity on who your target market is, there's a target market assessment. That's a great way to really dive deeper on where you have the opportunities and what those next steps are. So you can reach out to us and we'll make sure to send that out to you as a resource from today. For joining us today, Zach, we want to be able to support an organization that you're passionate about. Who's an organization that we can make a charitable contribution to on your behalf?
Man, I didn't even think I was going to get hit with that question.
We got to keep some things for, surprise going live.
That's cool. Man, I think because we're so heavily invested in the space that we work in, and we appreciate the work that this group does. The North Carolina Association for Physician Assistants is probably the one that comes to mind the most. It's a great field, and there's a lot of good people in that. So that would probably be the one thing that comes to mind.
Well, we know definitely appreciate all the work that medical professionals provide, especially over the last several years more than ever. So glad to be able to support that organization. I appreciate your time today.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So to dig a little bit deeper, dental school, when they graduate right after, or even the next, if they do anything post graduation kind of thing, can you help clarify that a little bit more? Which group are better, or which groups do you reach out to?
Yeah, so typically if it's a dental program, some of them go on to some fellowship or residency, or some of them just go straight into practice.
Right.
And that's with any medical opportunity there. And obviously they're making a lot less money, but I think it's all encompassing, because there's still a lot of things that the residents or fellows, even though they're making a lot less, need to start thinking about and doing. So I would say everybody, you're gonna get a mixed bag of going straight into the workforce versus additional training.
Got it. What about vet veterinarians? Is that, can you talk more about that? Have you had experience working with them?
A little bit. There's actually, there's an advisor in our office. So I mentioned a minute ago that there's a couple other people that do something similar to what we do. He does it on a more micro scale, but he actually does talk to the North Carolina, so NC State's vet school, which I think is one of the largest vet schools in the country. But yeah, so he does do that with veterinarians. I have not really focused on them, quite frankly, because the amount of debt that they take out versus their income is not our ideal market. It's very similar with physical therapists, but yeah, and a lot of them don't end up. One of the big things is with the student loans, if they can get forgiveness or not, and a lot of the veterinarians can't. So it's not been our main focus, but we have several veterinarian clients.
Okay, what about nursing programs?
Nurse practitioner, so the master's level programs we don't do anything with just RNs though.
Okay, master level programs, got it.
So I think it's good perspective that you could take this strategy and it doesn't have to be medical. You know, if you found a different niche, you could do the same kind of thing, and it may not be with universities or something, but you could probably still find associations or other groups that you could run the similar kind of strategy with, is what Zach talked about today.
Absolutely.
So we'll be back in 2 weeks from today, same time, noon Central, for our final segment this fall on how to close more A+ clients. And I think it's going to tie really nicely into the discussion we had today as well, because Amy Steiner out of the Kansas City office is going to be with us. And just this past quarter, from some of the efforts where she's really honed in on her work with getting specific and asking for more dental professionals, she got eight new A+ clients in a very short amount of time by just really getting specific and asking for what she was looking for. So be sure to join us in 2 weeks to hear more from Amy. She's from my hometown, so we'll have a little bit of Kansas City representation on here as well. So remember the try it at work tip that Zach talked about today to identify those connections that you have within those schools or associations, or who has just graduated or just came out of those programs. That could be a person that you could reach out to and get those conversations started. So I'll leave you with one final thought today. You know, when you speak to everyone, you speak to no one. When you speak to one person, they feel heard and understood. When you speak from your why, they feel inspired. So we hope you have a wonderful couple weeks ahead. Take action on something from today's conversation. Let us know how it goes. We want to hear your successes, your challenges, and we're here to support you in your efforts, especially as we're approaching the end of the calendar year and this fall season that we're officially in now. So have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you guys in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.